this is on. So welcome, Dolphin. I'm really happy we found the time to make this happen. I'll just take a little moment to maybe introduce you to those who do not know you on our audience. So Dolphin is in particular working a lot with relationships and communication. He's a coach and consultant, has been working for many, many years, especially in North America. Is that true? Yeah. And we met in Thailand, where I currently still reside. And back then I was even lucky to guide one workshop together with you. So you've been running hundreds of those workshops, and it was all about relationships. And I really learned a few beautiful, beautiful things from you doing this in collaboration. And I wanted to invite you onto the Embodiment podcast today, because you have created some very beautiful products as well over the last years since I know you, amongst others, Relationflix, an online portal for relationship advice and support and help. And we're going to hopefully hear a bit more about that. And also you're running the Relationship Breakthrough Accelerator, which is another thing I'm very curious about. And I feel like relationships are such a complex topic, and one of my personal passions too. And I'm really happy to hear a bit more from you. So maybe you want to say a few more things about you? What did I miss? What do you want people to know?
No, you didn't miss anything. Christina, it's great to be here. I really appreciate you inviting me on. And, it was neat when we met in Thailand. It was just like an easy kind of flow of warmth and ease and familiarity. I actually think we were at a workshop that you were helping with and I was a participant in. And at some point there was some space to do some contact. And that was, I think, the first time we really connected. And then we got a chance to know each other and do some work. For me, the work I do it's both extremely personal and deeply universal, as I think when we get deep enough into any work, we realize it's all really just connecting us all and showing us where we're the same. And so my life has been a kind of ongoing discovery of that, where the personal meets the universal. And I think my work is a reflection of that. It's able to address extremely complex challenges with utterly simple principles and practices and approaches that just cut through the noise. And I had a chance to speak professionally, and I ran lots of different programs for a really diverse group of people. I worked with homeless people. I worked with professional athletes. I've worked in prisons. I've worked with, entrepreneurs. And in it all, there are these core threads that just bind us and weave us together, where I can see those principles and the underlying humanity, no matter who I'm looking at. And so the work I do is really about inviting us all into that kind of perspective and to have the tools we need to parse out the noise from the signal.
Thank you. Wow, lots you said there. I have a question to start off with, maybe that might go straight deep into it. So let me know if you're uncomfortable asking it. But was there a personal, because you talk about the personal and the universal, was there a personal challenge in your life that brought you to pursue this path or this direction to really go deep?
Yeah, that's a great question. In some ways, I think it was sort of fated that I would do this work. My mother actually did all of the work that I was mentored in terms of the kind of transpersonal development and really deeper healing and communication work was heavily mentored through her. Like, she brought her work to the table when I started to learn. But she was doing that when I was a kid. And so it was sort of like, just in the space, osmotically, I think I was absorbing what she was up to. But the time in my life that comes to mind when you ask that question is, I was 24 or 25. At that point, I'd never had like a relationship that I felt really, really amazing about. Everything felt out of balance. Either I was more into them than they were into me, or they were more into me than I was into them. And I felt like I hadn't fallen in love, and I deeply wanted to. And at some point around that time, 24, 25, in a state of kind of genuine self-inquiry, I realized that I had lost my innocence. That I had, in my childhood and adolescence, I had kind of covered over my own openness and innocence in the interest of protecting myself from being hurt. And that was what was cutting me off from love. And so then there was about a 3-year process where I was really, anything I could kind of get my hands on, that I could dive into, that I could learn about, that I could practice to reconnect with this innocence that I knew was there, that I couldn't feel anymore. And so it didn't happen in a lightning bolt, but then I fell in love and had my heart broken. And then I fell in love again and had my heart broken. And then I fell in love a third time. So within about 3 years of I did my 3 years of work, and then over a 3-year period, once a year, I fell in love and had my heart broken. And that last time was like a complete shattering of my sense of self. And that set me off on I think a deeper exploration of what my wholeness needed to come into being. And obviously, as a natural consequence, I really grew into my ability to support and coach and guide other people in that process.
Yeah, fully understand. Going through the deep, dark sides of falling in love as well is part of it. So that brings me to, are you willing to share the secret of what made you be able to regain your innocence? And then also, maybe for a lot of us, how did you overcome the heartbreak and not get discouraged? Is there anything you can...
Okay. Yeah. How do you recapture innocence? That's what I'm hearing from the first question.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think first you need to really want to find the truth versus wanting to find a particular result. And I think oftentimes, even with really well-intentioned inner work, we're doing the work so that we can not feel as much pain, or so we can have a better relationship, or so we can be more successful in business. And when we place that externalized sort of extrinsic result as a primary motive, we're going to cut corners, and I think we're going to miss the real work of reconnecting with our innocence, which is, when we're truly innocent, like say when we were very newly into this world, we're not trying to be innocent, and we're certainly not connected to some specific goal or outcome. We're just in our most natural state of being, and innocence is it's like the aroma from a flower. It's not something you try to do. It just happens as a natural consequence. So, my process for that was varied. I recognized I needed to be more disciplined, which is a funny kind of parallel for innocence, but I didn't have discipline growing up. I didn't have the right kind of fatherly or masculine support. And so that was a big weak spot in me. And I realized that I needed to grow up in that way. And so there was actually a discipline component to that 3-year process. There was also lots of meditation and mindfulness stuff. There was lots of, self-created practices. Like I spent about 1.5 years, almost 2 years, where as soon as I felt a kind of sense of withhold, like I was with someone and there was something that was true for me that I didn't want them to know about, I would just say it. I would say, hey, I just want to let you know that right now I got this thought going on and here's what it is. And I want you to know. So I just started to create these pieces that kind of pulled the curtains back and prevented there to be stuff that I was keeping inside that wasn't available to people on the outside. And so there was something about creating, to dissolve self-created barriers around how information could move into me, within me, and from me to others. So, and just open-heartedness, would say is at the heart of all of it. Just me being willing to open my heart, especially when things were painful or uncomfortable. And it's most of the transformation was invisible. Like things were shifting and changing in me where I didn't really know it until after the fact in retrospect. And so that's another piece. If we're looking for a result, we'll miss that. Like I was clear, I just was on a mission, no matter what it took, to recreate that authentic innocence in myself. And because of that, I was willing to stay with it, even though it appeared for long periods of time like nothing was happening. This is just same. So, those are the pieces that first come to mind around that first question. So I don't know if you want to ask anything else around that, or we can move on to the second question. I just want to make sure that felt complete as an answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm impressed. We went straight into the more spiritual deep dive, and now I've got the dogs barking in the background. But what I'm hearing is like really making the path the goal and not have any sort of goal towards. So actually, the initial impulse for doing the work, for doing this 3-year journey, you put completely to the side and just dedicate your time to yourself in a way, not to reach for something out there. And part of me wonders as well, how do you not make that the goal then? So like not to fall into that trap of maybe then that becomes the next goal where all the things we do, the same process happens. Do you understand that question?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a funny, it's sort of like a catch-22 where, to really let go, you can't try, but if you're trying to let go, you can't, like you get into this sort of loopy, cyclical stuckness. And the ego can always pick up anything and pervert it, right? So the purity of the teaching isn't what's most important. It's the purity of the heart that's receiving and doing whatever it's doing with the teaching. So I would say that the truth of the matter is that I oscillated between wanting it to be better, wanting my heart to open, wanting to find love, and just being on a genuine journey of discovery. And, I like to think, and I think this will resonate with the audience for the Embodiment podcast, there are levels of intelligence in us, levels of wisdom, and they all belong, but they're not all created equal. And so I feel like if we go up into our head to try to answer profound existential questions, we're lost. Like the mind it's not going to get us there. And the body on its own actually isn't fully going to get us there either. But when we're listening to the body from an honest place, there's real truth and wisdom there. And it's like the longing. My longing for innocence and love was so pure. The longing in and of itself. I could add all sorts of things. We can create all sorts of self-created dramas around our longings. But the longing itself is this pure ache in our being that knows we're meant to move in a particular direction. We're meant to cultivate something. And before we add any labels to that, we can just know and trust where that longing is coming from and allow it in much more a creative way, allow it to inform our choices. And I think about these incredible turtles that live for 100 years. They leave a beach and they go out into the ocean and they live their lives, and then like thousands of miles away, and then the longing, the call, they swim thousands of miles to the same beach they were born on, and they lay eggs for the next generation. Like I have goosebumps. This is an embodied response to longing. The turtle is not smarter than people. But how many people could do that? How many people could leave a place at the youngest age and then find their own intuitive way back to that? So these turtles are tuned into a longing and a knowing, and it gets them there. Now, I think we have access to the same kind of intelligent knowing and longing, but we have all of this, human and often egoistic overlay, and it becomes essentially impossible to hear the longing with the noise of the ego. And so that's why a lot of meditation and mindfulness practices can be so powerful, because they allow us to attune to something subtle, even while or if the mind is doing whatever it does.
So would you recommend engaging in a meditation mindfulness practice then as the first step for somebody who's like, oh my God, okay, that's me. I want to tap into this longing, but I don't know how. How do I strip away all these layers? Where would somebody start? The first simple thing.
Yeah. So I'm going to say something that people may not like. It's not wrong to engage in meditation and mindfulness practice, but I've actually talked to a number of people now who have done a deep dive. Like it's been 20 or 30 years of deep commitment to a meditation practice, all to find out that the practice was never going to get them there. And that's where our honesty of heart and sincerity comes in. A meditation practice can bring someone to their own real knowing of their own being, their own truth. And they can become awakened. They can become an enlightened person. But it can also happen free of a meditation practice. So the meditation practice in and of itself isn't going to get you there. It's just our way to attune to something that's deeper than your familiar way of thinking and feeling. And as soon as you get that, then the practice becomes developmental versus like connecting into truth is not process oriented. If you make connecting to the truth that's already there a process, then as soon as you start, you've missed it, right? So the practices can be helpful with an open and honest, sincere heart wanting to know and discover. And practices can also become barriers to our own authentic being because we're making it about getting somewhere that already exists there inside of us.
So on some level, we're doing the same thing that we started talking about. Like if you set that goal and you're just aiming to get towards that goal, you're missing all the good stuff on the way that it's actually about, to recognize what is already there. And I guess meditation in particular is also a solo practice. So maybe that doesn't necessarily help you learn how to engage with others.
Well, I mean, that's a great point. It doesn't have to be, and maybe we can get into definitions, but part of my work includes something I call the relating meditation. And so it's bringing the same quality, the same curiosity, the same intention that a solo meditation practice is bringing, but it includes the other. And so we can absolutely use meditation practices to cultivate awareness and presence and wisdom in the midst of our relating.
Okay. So can you just mention a couple more things of like how can I imagine this relational meditation to be like? I think I've personally experienced it with you, but maybe for the audience, it'd be nice to get a better idea.
Yeah. So the way that the relating meditation works, at least in its most essential iteration, is that you're in a dyad or you're doing some kind of practice. You can do it even in a group circle. So it doesn't have to be a dyad, but often in a dyad. And one person starts. And all they do is, while they're both holding eye contact with one another, one of them says, "As I'm looking at you, I feel." And they tune their awareness into their physical body, their somatic sensations, and they just identify one of the sensations. Usually there's dozens, hundreds of sensations going on. You just choose one. So it's a heat or a cold or a prickling or a tickling or a pressure or whatever it is, a physical sensation in a specific location. And I encourage people without causation. So it's just as precise as you can get to a present physical sensation in your body. And you just say, "And I'm feeling," and you share that with the person that you're in front of. And so it might sound like, "As I'm sitting here with you, I feel an ache in my right knee." Complete. And then the other person goes, "As I'm sitting here with you, I feel a tickle on my right eyebrow." You could go.
So then I'd say, "As I'm sitting here with you, I feel a bit of tension in my lower back."
Yeah. Beautiful.
That's it.
And so, that's it. And so you could just do that. And then in longer workshops or retreats, I might have a group do that for a half an hour with different partners, just sharing physical sensations. What's incredible about this practice is that in that 30 minutes, where all we're talking about is very simple, mundane physical sensations, there's like a palpable shift in depth and intimacy in the space. Because what's actually going on there is, I'm saying, here's what's going on in this human being over here. Like, I'm not hiding. Here's my inner world. I want to share it with you. But it's none of the content we're used to relating to when it comes to like creating intimacy or feeling close or feeling like we know someone. It's just your experience in the present moment. But it does something in us, both when we receive that kind of share and when we give it. And then the other dimensions of the relating meditation, then we can include the emotional body. So we can start sharing about the emotional experiences we're having, and we can share about the mental experiences we're having. I'm having this thought, just stating it as it is, as closely as we can. And the relating meditation, okay, here's one other thing that we'll notice happens. When we tune into our inner world, most people will naturally do this. So they'll even say, as I'm looking at you, I feel...
My inner world is somewhere above. You didn't see this.
It is.
I'll just mention it to those of you who are not watching the video. Dolphin was just looking up into the air towards the ceiling somewhere.
Yeah. So they look away from the one they're with, connecting to. And it's totally, in a way, it makes sense. We weren't taught. I call this multidirectional awareness. This ability, this openness, where I'm including the external reality that's there with me, i.e. the other, and whatever I know of what's going on with them. And without going away from them, I'm able to be fully aware of my inner world. Now, when we first start doing this, we'll notice something. Most of us are oriented one way or the other, and often situation dependent. In other words, some of us are so focused on the other, we actually have zero connection to our body, to what's going on in us, to our heart rate, to our breathing rate. We're essentially not there. All of our awareness and attention is on them. Others might be really self-oriented in their awareness, where they're with someone, but actually they're like, oh my God, I got this feeling and I'm thinking, and I said that thing, and they are not even tracking at all what's going on with the other. So we'll notice our natural orientation in terms of where do I spend my time interpersonally. But this ability to hold our own inner experience while we hold our connection with another without learning any other skill has the ability to really transform our relational life, because it just reveals so much of what's obviously there, but mostly missed because we're so conditioned in our relating. We're so operating from a patterned way of being, an unconscious way of being.
Yeah. Thank you so much for explaining a bit more about this exercise. And for some of you, it might be like, oh yeah, this sounds really, really simple and easy to do. But I'm aware that even the level of becoming aware of the physical sensations in the body can be difficult enough for many. And then to bring that into the relational adds a whole other level to it that makes it even more complex. And for some people, simply eye contact can be a big step. So I guess it's nice to start with that then. I want to move a bit to your Relationship Breakthrough Accelerator. So for those who are already like, yeah, I'm comfortable with all this basic stuff, I have the capacity to stay aware of my own body and myself and my state while relating. What is the accelerator all about? What are the breakthroughs we're talking about?
Yeah. The accelerator really is sort of the centerpiece of my work. It's a long-term program. In other words, people who join the program have lifetime access to both the curriculum material, the weekly group coaching calls with one-to-one support from me, and a monthly workshop that's included as just an ongoing support of the program. And the reason I wanted to create a program that is so comprehensive and sort of long-lasting is that I worked for almost 20 years, basically 20 years of work in this arena. And one of the big critiques I would say two of the big critiques I had were, no matter how powerful the work you do, if you do a coaching session or a weekend retreat or a long retreat, or you do a multi-week group, you can create incredible shifts and realizations for people. But the reality is that after that experience, 6 months, 12 months later, how much of that transformation is continuing to carry forward into their life? For a really rare group of people, they wake up to something and they just follow through all the way. That's like 99.9999% of the time not how it goes. Most of us slip somewhat or mostly back into our old way of being. So I wanted to create something that really had the right kind of container to support people. And what kind of transformation? Whatever is the biggest, deepest, most stuck place in your life around relationships can shift and change. You can completely transform the reality of relationship in your life, no matter what the past has been. And it's not, I think I'm amazing at what I do, but it's not that. It's that the program itself is so simple. It's like I spent 20 years figuring out all the things that don't really do it and the few things that really do it. And that's where most of the time and energy in the program goes. It's like, I call them the active ingredient. How can we take utterly beautiful care of the active ingredients in our own empowerment, our own embodiment, our own transformation, and clear the table of everything else. And in that, it's like, again, people come and they for 50 or 60 years, they've been struggling with something profound, and they find their freedom. They find a kind of liberation, or they find the real recipe that's there for them to authentically be fully expressed and to complete their past so that it's not in the way anymore.
Beautiful. So it's a really something taking them by the hand to integrate it into daily life, rather than here's all this knowledge and techniques and tools to fix your life, but then you're lost on your own, bringing it back. Is it only for people like that are currently in a relationship? Do you have to come as a couple, or is it more this solo endeavor that you do? And because I'm hearing it's very personalized, it's very like much depending on the person.
Yeah, it's very, again, the principles that I use are extremely essential and universal. I think they address people at their core. And the way the program is designed is there's opportunity as we get into the later stages of the curriculum for them to populate their personal pieces in there. So it becomes both very broad and universal. And then it gets razor precise in terms of like your particular childhood, your attachment pieces, your unspoken, unresolved relational challenges. All of that gets populated by you. So, but to answer your question, I think it's one of the most incredible, most powerful things you can do in a partnership, to both join something that really addresses you, that really addresses the heart of who and what you are and what your relationship is about. And in spite of that being so, the program is designed for you to do on your own. And even people that come as couples, and people do, I put a bit of pressure on them. I say, are both of you deeply individually wanting to do this work? Because what often happens when a couple joins a program like this is one of them is super into it, and in some way the other one's being brought along. And if you want to get to the heart of your relational stuff, you can't get there if you're doing it because someone else said you should. So that's my criteria for working with couples. Is great, but whoever's definitely in, great. And if there's someone else that's like, yeah, I'm going because my partner said so, I'll actually ask them to reconsider, because it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And I'm not going to push someone into where they need to go to make those transformations. They need to know from the start that they're ready and willing, and then I become a guide for that journey.
Yeah. And I'm hearing really that element of choice as well. You need to make the choice to be ready, to be committed, to be same as for being in that relationship, I guess. So even that little step. So I'm curious, what would you say are the three main areas that you've seen over the course of this work that you've been doing for 20 years, you said? The three main areas that people get really stuck with in relating.
Can I answer it in two ways?
Sure.
Yeah. So, I think there's the stuckness of what we see on the surface. And then there's the root of those things. And so, the things that often get identified on the surface is like, I want this to be a great relationship, but my partner, right? So, and we're all the protagonists in our own drama, right? So when we're struggling in our relationship, it's really hard to get out of this cycle of like, you. It's them. If only they were different, everything would be great.
Well, I'm clearly perfect in my relationship.
Yeah, of course. Well, I know you. It's no problem. So that piece to me is really primary. That we have trouble. We have trouble being responsible in what's going on in the relationship, and we tend to outsource the responsibility. And it doesn't mean that there isn't stuff going on with them that they maybe could be more responsible for, but whoever we are, like, we're at the heart of our lives. We're at the heart of our agency. And as soon, no matter what the circumstances, as soon as I say, it's your fault, it's this way, I'm outsourcing my own empowerment. The agency that I do have is no longer there anymore because I've made it your fault. So that's a really huge one. I think we mistake the content of our arguments for the context that the arguments are coming from. In other words, the laundry on the floor, the toilet seat that's up, the bill that didn't get paid. Those pieces are are not really what bothers us. It's that those pieces represent deeper values that we care about, and often we're attached to, and we don't know how to communicate about those deeper values. And we don't know how to speak them in a way that really allows the other to really see and feel us. So that's a huge piece. And the other one is that I think we tend to, in modern human culture, Western maybe in particular, we tend to engage relationship from what I would describe as a pretty frivolous place. We've turned it into more like an amusement park ride than the core vehicle for our evolution and transformation. And you just can't get what we most long for in relationship when we try to just derive pleasure and enjoyment from it. That this is never going to happen. So those three pieces feel like profound challenges. And of course, the colors of those on the surface can be really anything. And I'll throw one more in that I think is really at the root of all of it, which is, I think we don't really understand how our values inform our choices and our perceptions. And what I mean by that is, I can say I have a value of compassion. And I think a lot of people, especially people on a spiritual path or a personal development path, would include that as something that they aspire to be and do. So then what happens if someone who aspires to be compassionate becomes a jerk? What if they act out these jerky behaviors, whatever those are? What's happening? Is it that that's their value, but just in that moment they threw the value out the window? Or, a lot of people will say, well, they've been traumatized. And so the trauma pattern came in and kind of took control. And what I will suggest, and this is, not everyone loves this, but when we get nasty with others, at the heart of that, what's really going on is we're in the midst of our own pain and discomfort. And some part of us says, no, I don't want to feel this. And the fastest way we can stop feeling our own inner pain and disconnection is by dehumanizing and mistreating someone else. It doesn't really nourish us or them, but it's a fast way to outsource our pain. And so again, it's like, if our values are really about compassion and openness, we become someone who's willing to be with our own pain in spite of the available utility of the mistreatment of others, regardless of the level of pain. So once we get clear about values and that when the true values are there informing our ways of being and our choices, we're liberated from outsourcing the responsibility for what we feel. And I think there's way more we could get into there, but that I'll leave it there in terms of when we really get what values are and how they can inform our ways of being, we become free of pretending as though, the responsibility lies somewhere other than us.
So I keep hearing that element of taking responsibility, ownership, to really also the responsibility lying with the individual to not, what you said, it was outsourcing. What I'm also hearing is disembodying. Like, if I'm not willing to feel what's happening in myself and I kind of go away from my physical, sensational, emotional experience, I'm disembodying myself on some level. So the first step we talked about, what you do in the workshops, and also the relational meditation would once again be the starting point, I guess, to really tap back into how am I feeling?
Yeah, definitely one of them. There's lots of ways, but the body is such a beautiful instrument and vehicle for us to cut through the conditioned stories that are operating.
Yeah, I found that in my own history, relationship history, that when I get lost in my own stories and my own bullshit, that the only way to step out of it is to be really willing to drop a few levels deeper, to feel the discomfort, to feel the sensations in my body, and thereby drop all the mental noise that keeps me stuck in wanting to see a partner potentially as an enemy or anything like that. I have another question, because you've created or co-founded this platform, Relationflix. We're switching topic around now. But what made you, first of all, want to create something like it? And also, how is it possible to do relationship work in a format like Netflix? Because for me, I'm like, yeah, but then I watch a video, but isn't that sort of not very embodied or applicable then, because I'm just consuming it sitting in front of my screen? Maybe you can answer these two questions.
Yeah. So Relationflix is sort of the heart and brainchild of my business partner, Stephen Rowland. He came to me almost 4 years ago now with this idea. We were both living in the same city. We both had a long history of being involved in the relational spaces, and professionally and personally. And we both had a love of videography and filmmaking and digital storytelling. So it was just something that when we, you have those conversations with people and you just think, there's just nothing in me that has a no for this. It was just all yes. And so we jumped in. We started to meet regularly. We started to brainstorm. We started to let's just do it. There's a million things you could plan out and think about, but we just said, let's start doing it. So we started to reach into our network of educators and authors and people that we knew. And, people came forward and started to play with us. And so right now it's sort of, we're going to launch more officially in February of this year. The 19th, we're doing a live hybrid event in Victoria, Canada. So it'll be happening live in Victoria, but also broadcast on our platform online. And it's really just, we want to bring as much content of all kinds with as much value as possible to people that want to learn and grow in relationship. And we just didn't see it at the time, and we said, let's do it. So yeah, we're in the early game in terms of really bringing that to its fullness, but it's been a beautiful, super challenging journey, and we're still on the horse. So that's where that's at. In terms of trying to translate the magic of interpersonal physicality to the online environment, like the first thing I would say is like you can't. You fundamentally can't reproduce it, and even 1,000 years from now, whatever happens with digital whatevers, something else is going on when human beings are in a physical space together. And so to pretend as though that's not so, I think is just not really aware of what it means to be physically together. That being said, to believe that there's nothing transmitted through these kinds of digital spaces and environments and devices is also not true. Like I think about like storytelling, and in particular cinema. You can sit in a movie and be just profoundly touched and moved, and you can have massive awakenings of the nature of your own existence through these mediums. And so that's, to me, what the mission or vision is like, can we create opportunities where people are in the fullness of their expression in front of a camera, and that somehow the essence of that can come through and really move and touch and transform those that are available for it. And yeah, I think that's the way I would answer that question.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I've seen a couple of attempts now, obviously with COVID and all that. We've had a wave of things moving online, moving into that digital space where people believed it was impossible. But I find the element of accessibility that comes with that is beautiful, even though maybe some of the depth or some facets of it get lost. It can reach a much larger audience that also might really benefit from this sort of work, because in the end, we're relational beings, right? So let's come back to a bit more of a personal question now, because you've done this work for 20 years now. Are you perfect in your own relationship? How does that show up, and what do you do in your own life?
Yeah, I'll start answering that question in a way that's meant to be funny, but also extremely just true. We grow and embody in the exact ways and spaces that we engage. And here's one of the kind of rubs or the problems with gurus or teachers or educators is you can become very good at telling other people how to live. That in and of itself, even if you give people really great advice, even if you really know your stuff, that doesn't mean you've embodied all of that. In the best case, the teacher embodies what they teach, and the teaching is from that embodiment versus just they're really smart and they've connected dots intellectually and they can articulate. Okay, great. So for me, I spent a lot of time in front of people, speaking, facilitating, educating, inviting, I'm very good in that space. And, the relationship I'm in now is about 4 years old. And we have a 2-year-old son. And wow, did I have some unintegrated, childish parts of me that were just laying in wait for a deeply committed relationship. So it's been extremely sobering and humbling. I've got to see parts of myself that I was like, oh wow, I haven't got to that yet, huh? Okay. So yeah, I'm consistently stretching to hold it with compassion. I'm consistently looking for ways to be responsive when I fall short, when I'm not being and doing where my values are at and what we've made commitments and agreements around. And when those agreements don't feel true anymore, I'm really, really there to express hey, I know we've been saying X, Y, and Z, but I can see now that's not true for me anymore. So let's come back to that. And can we make some new agreements around that? So the embodiment piece is a lifelong journey. You're never there when it comes to embodiment. I think there are places where some significant and relevant kind of completion takes place, but to say that you're finished embodying is just that's not how it goes. There's always more as a human being. We're part of an unfolding that long preceded us and long will outlive us. And so for our time, we're just conscious or unconscious participants in that until the very last breath. And then whatever happens, wherever we go after that, our opportunity in a body is done.
I really appreciate this very, very honest, authentic response. And I think that's one thing I very, very much appreciate about you as well. It shows the work you've started off with, that part of taking off the layers and really dropping into that slightly vulnerable place of really showing who you are in this very moment without pretense, and that, translating into all areas. Thank you. I think we're coming to the end, but I want to leave a little bit of room and maybe a reflection. If you have 3 tips for our listeners of what they could do, just to summarize now after so many also deeply spiritual site talk elements, where could they start to become more embodied, or I don't want to use the word better because, but to address their relationships, if that is something they want, what would you recommend?
Yeah. Let me sit with that just for a second. One of the most powerful things we can do is to allow for things to be as they are, with genuinely no need for them to be different. So, and this is usually not what people want to hear. If they're feeling a call to move forward, or they're feeling stuck, or they're really struggling, they don't want to do that. But if you want genuine transformation, that's the space that genuine transformation happens out of, not initially a desire to make it different because you've judged that the way things are not okay. So how can you make space for them to be just as it is, for your partner, your parents, your boss, whoever, wherever the relationships are at? It's just really okay that they are how they are, and it is the way it is, and you are the way you are. And ideally you get to a place where you're warmly okay with that. So it's just there's almost a warm smile inside. And maybe you see just some of the irony and some of the silliness of the human condition. That openness, that warmth is deeply nourishing to you, and it opens perspective and provides clarity where often it's not available. The second thing is for you to trust yourself, and I'm going to couch that in a container that recognizes we have abandoned ourselves many, many times. that we have reason to not trust or believe ourselves. But it's sort of like each time we pick ourselves up, there's an opportunity for us to get more honest. And the more honest you are, the more trustworthy you are. And when we really get that, we become really powerful in terms of supporting our own transformation. And I'll give you a practical one as the third. This is incredibly just rubber hits the road. There's that saying, you become like the 5 people you spend most of your time with. And I wouldn't necessarily use the number 5, but we become each other. Just naturally, without any effort to do so. In relationship, we become each other. We just share our being and all of our conditioning, and it just gets distributed. And I believe that's a natural process because we're meant to process our trauma and our wounds, and we're meant to grow and evolve in relationship. And in a way, we have to. And so to make that practical for anyone that wants to really move forward relationally in terms of growth and development, how can you spend more time with people that are further along that journey than you? And that can be watching even like YouTube videos or reading books. That's fine. But is there a place in your community where you can spend time with these people? Can you put yourself out there and say, hey, like, I just really appreciate the way you are and the way you kind of behave and communicate, and I'm inspired. I would love to spend time with you. Can we go for coffee sometime? Or find a coach, or you go to a dance class with a teacher who has it. Or like when you're with these people, you are tuned into what's possible. And in a way, it's like remembering you're this turtle with this deep intelligence, and you just need to reconnect with it and start to follow it. And if you've been living among giraffes, but you're a turtle, well, find some turtles, find some people that are tuned in, and let them show you how to do it again.
Now I'm taking away, become a turtle and find other turtles.
That's right. That's my only message in the world.
Wow. Thank you so much. I think there was a lot of very rich content sharing that I appreciate. Thank you for coming. I'm just wanting to hear, where can people find you if they want to hear you more or find the courses you've mentioned? We're going to put some links below here as well. But what's coming up maybe soon? Next year?
Yeah, great. So I'm actually just about to launch a new website. It's just going to be dolphinkasper.com. So that's my full name. Kasper's with a K. I'll make sure Christina has the links. Relationflix.com. That's RELATIONFLIX.com.
Put it here too.
Yeah, and then my Instagram, and I have a YouTube channel, all Dolphin Kasper, and just easy to find, just free offerings and free support from me through those things. And then obviously easy ways to find out the deeper dive. The Relationship Breakthrough Accelerator is really my primary invitation right now for people that are ready to do that long-term work and have the right kind of support. And that's a piece that people are welcome to kind of put their hat in the ring for.
Great. And to catch you live anywhere, is there an opportunity, or is most of your work online at the moment? Yeah,
so it's a great question. So, I mean, I'm speaking at the Journey to Secure. It's an online conference / retreat at the end of January. I'm doing another couple online summits in February and March. And in February 19th in Victoria, Canada, I'll be speaking. I'll be flying back to Canada to speak and be at that event. So for people that are interested, you can find me. I can give you information to those things, and I'll get some of those links to you, Christina.
Great. I'll share everything of that. I don't know exactly when we're launching this particular episode. So date-wise, check which ones are still coming up.
Perfect.
Oh, thank you so much, Dolphin. It was a real pleasure talking to you and hearing
always
you share.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate the space, and I look forward to whatever's next.
Well, if you like that, you probably like embodimentunlimited.com and our app. So on both of these things, you can get a bunch of podcasts that aren't available here, some exclusive ones with some big names, some people you'll probably recognize that are over there. There's a copy of my book, PDF, my first book on embodiment, which seems that people like. I sold quite a few copies on Amazon, but there's a free copy there. What else is there? Loads of videos of me coaching embodiment, resources on trauma, on meditation, on yoga. And you can also chat to people without going on Facebook or any of that nonsense. So if you want to chat embodiment people, that's there. And it's on the embodimentunlimited.com, all free, and the app available at the App Store and all that good stuff. So if you like this, do check those out.